Good evening, and welcome to Knowing How to Navigate Leaving the Workforce. This webinar and telelearning series is brought to you by Can Do Multiple Sclerosis, the National Multiple Sclerosis Society, the Multiple Sclerosis Society of Canada, and Needy Meds. This is the third in a four-part series looking at employment issues and MS. My name is Laura Coyne, and I'm the Programs Manager for Can Do MS. Your moderator this evening is Steve Nissen, the Director of the MS Navigator Services Delivery at the National MS Society. Can Do MS transforms lives. We deliver educational programs on exercise, nutrition, and symptom management to inspire and motivate long-lasting change for those with MS and their families to help them thrive. Please visit the Can Do MS website, mscando.org, to learn more about Can Do MS's online and nationwide in-person programs. Can Do MS is excited to partner with the National MS Society to bring you 15 webinars in 2017. At this time, I would like to introduce Steve Nissen.
Good evening, everyone. The mission of the National Multiple Sclerosis Society is to help people affected by MS to live their best lives as they stop MS in its tracks, restore what has been lost, and to end MS forever. We are pleased to have you join us in tonight's program, and you can explore some of the other Society's programs, services, connection opportunities, and resources at nationalmssociety.org. We will save about 20 minutes at the end of this webinar for questions and for answers. If you do have a question during the presentation, please type it in using the questions chat box found in your control panel. I do encourage you to be a part of tonight's interactive discussion. This presentation is being taped and will be archived on both Can Do MS's website as well as the National MS Society's website. Because this is being taped, all telephone lines have been muted. You can download a copy of tonight's presentation plus a resource handout that provides additional resources from your control panel during tonight's presentation. Please note in the control panel on your screen the section that is entitled Handouts. If you do expand that section, you will see there are two handouts. One is a copy of tonight's slides, as well as a very extensive list of resources. I do encourage you to download both, but especially the resource list, as that will not be available. After tonight's program. A copy of the presentation, however, will be available, and that will arrive in the follow-up email that will be sent out following tonight's program. The topic for tonight's webinar is knowing how to navigate leaving the workforce. Throughout the course of your career, there might be times when you consider separating from the workforce, especially if your MS symptoms become more difficult to manage. But what do you do to make sure that you have exhausted all of your options and to not make a rash decision? Once you have made the decision, what options do you have in terms of benefits, financial income, and stability? And what do you do once you do stop working? What's next? We know that this is a very personal choice to make, but our speakers tonight will talk about things to consider and the resources that are available to help you with this difficult choice. Most importantly, it is critical to determine what is in your best interest and to think proactively about all of your options. Our speakers for this evening are Ronnie Hochberg and Sylvia Stasio. Ronnie Hochberg holds a Master's of Science degree in Rehabilitation Counseling Psychology from the University of Wisconsin and is a licensed mental health clinician and a certified rehabilitation counselor. Ronnie was the assistant director for the ambulatory psychiatry department of continuing day treatment partial hospital and vocational services program and has worked at Mount Sinai Hospital for over 30 years with adults with serious mental illness. She is currently an adjunct professor at Hunter College Department of Foundations and Counseling Programs, teaching master's level students skills to enter the mental health and rehabilitation counseling fields. She has been a consultant with the New York City office of the National Multiple Sclerosis Society since 1985, specializing in direct counseling services for individuals who are living with MS that are newly diagnosed, families, and children. Plus, she has been facilitating the Managing MS on the Job support group. Sylvia Stasio is a certified financial planner professional in the Washington, D.C. area. She has over 15 years of experience in the financial services industry, working with individuals, small businesses, and nonprofit organizations on the development and the implementation of retirement and investment planning strategies. Sylvia did earn a Bachelor's of Science degree in management from Tulane University and a Master's of Science degree in marketing from American. As a member of the Society of Financial Service Professionals, Sylvia chaired the Financial Education Partners Program, which works to provide pro bono financial advisory services to members of the National MS Society. She continues to work with the National MS Society to assist people with getting the information, the advice, and alternatives that they need to make an informed decisions about their financial future. Thanks so much, Ronnie and Sylvia, for joining us tonight. And Sylvia, I now will turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Steve. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight. As you can well imagine, knowing when and how to leave the workforce is a very personal decision based on a number of factors, both on the employment or career side of things, as well as on the financial side of things. It would be impossible for Ronnie and I to discuss in detail all of those factors. Tonight's program will include the most common employment and financial considerations needed in making these decisions. We will also offer you a decision-making strategy or tool that can help you make appropriate decisions for you as you navigate your own journey. Lastly, we'll illustrate the process with a case study, and after the program, we'll have some time for Q&A.
Good evening, everybody. This is Ronnie Hochberg. It's a pleasure to be on the call this evening. Some people with MS continue to work many years after being diagnosed. Others leave the workforce soon after the initial diagnosis or after a major exacerbation. Research shows that there is a significant exit from the labor force with the continuation of the disease. It is estimated that 40% of people with MS in the United States are currently employed. It is projected that 80% of people with MS who were working at the time of their diagnosis are no longer employed within 10 years. It is further estimated that only 20 to 25% of people with MS will continue to work until retirement age. These statistics are indicative of the need for useful information to prepare for employment and financial stability as you become faced with the unpredictability of MS.
And with the reduction in income due to prematurely exiting the workforce, coupled with the fact that MS is an expensive disease with ever-increasing costs like health insurance, medications, mobility aids, and caretaking, it's easy to understand the importance of planning ahead.
So here are a few facts. The ADA is a federal law that prohibits discrimination for any qualified individual with a disability throughout the employment process. It requires an employer to provide reasonable accommodations to perform the essential functions of your job as long as it does not cause the employer undue financial hardship. So to continue with our polling, and there it is, polling question. So if presently employed, within the last 12 months, have you asked your employer for an accommodation? Yes or no? So it looks like the vast majority of people on the call have not asked for an accommodation within the last 12 months. So requesting an accommodation is a personal and individualized decision. I suggest prior to requesting accommodations, you discuss your specific situation with your healthcare provider, family, friends, and the MS navigator. Research and develop a well-thought-out plan prior to making your request. You can view the archived February 2017 MS Can Do webinar, which will provide you with fabulous resources and information on negotiating reasonable accommodations. And we'll be talking more about reasonable accommodations as we go throughout this presentation. Over the course of your life, your employment status will change depending on your specific MS symptoms and your overall physical health status. The above diagram is a linear employment continuum. However, I suggest that you view your employment trajectory as one of rolling hills rather than as a linear progression. The up and down nature and unpredictability of MS is like one of rolling hills and directly impacts your career choices at any point in time over the course of your employment life. Some important questions to ask yourself are, if I continue to work full-time or part-time, will I disclose my MS condition to my employer and request reasonable accommodations? Will I continue to work part-time and apply for disability benefits? What steps can I take to help me decide if I should continue to work or if I should leave the workforce entirely? Planning ahead to optimize financial security is critical. This webinar will provide you with useful strategies and resources to put in your toolbox. Living with MS triggers concerns about future job choices and potential work capacity, health insurance benefits, and financial considerations. Some of the questions and common concerns raised by individuals with MS throughout the employment continuum are, do I disclose my MS diagnosis to my employer? How will I manage workplace discrimination? How do I access job accommodations? Will I be able to stay in the workforce? How can I function on the job when I'm faced with fatigue, cognitive, and physical challenges? How can I maintain my work capacity if I'm facing future progression and decline? How can I continue to work with the unpredictability of my MS symptoms? As the course of MS changes, it is likely to require some adjustments in work activity and decisions about work capacity. The Living Well with MS, Working with MS, located in the National MS Society Employment website, provides resources to help guide you as you consider where you are on the employment continuum, whether you are returning to work, trying to maintain your current job, considering a change in the type of work you do, or perhaps considering unpaid work activities. Completing these self-assessments can help you identify your overall talents, personal attributes, transferable skills, and even consider some new career-related possibilities. Perhaps through your self-discovery, you've decided to request a reasonable accommodation from your employer. As mentioned earlier, this is required by the ADA. A reasonable accommodation is an adjustment in job duties and/or work setting to meet the individualized need of the employee with a disability. When possible, the lower cost or no cost accommodations can be very effective. Consider ways to modify your work schedule, perhaps adding in periodic rest breaks or altering your work hours. Even requesting telecommuting options that allow you to work from home. The Job Accommodation Network, known as JAN, provides free consultation and technical assistance, including writing an accommodation request letter. JAN's Searchable Online Accommodation Resource, or SOAR, can help you explore various accommodations, including computer technology, assistive equipment, and adaptive office equipment that enhance your work performance. You may be considering changing your current employment or beginning to consider a career change. But where do you begin? What is the right path to take? Well, there is no one-size-fits-all model, and it requires a lot of time and evaluation. Taking a look at the whole picture to evaluate your skills and your interests and to research opportunities from a different perspective. The resources on this slide can help you through this process. The Career One Stop is a United States Department of Labor career planning resource to explore careers, trainings, and jobs. It has useful information and a link for workers with disabilities. The Occupational Information Network, otherwise known as ONET, is also a United States Department of Labor online resource used to explore a variety of occupations. It provides extensive career exploration tools and can assist you if you're looking to find or change careers. And the two of those resources coordinate with each other when you go onto the website. You can also contact your state vocational rehabilitation agency for localized employment-related services. The vocational rehabilitation agencies offer many, many services for people that are looking for employment, looking for alternative employment, home-based employment, and offer diagnostic vocational evaluations, training, job searches, self-employment opportunities, and telecommunity opportunities that are based on individuals' needs and resources. You can access the State Vocational Rehabilitation Agency link for your state directory. You can call the employment, you can also call the navigator who can assist you to find those resources. And the navigator is 1-800-526-7234. This slide provides you with the link to access additional employment information available through the National MS Society website. Sylvia will now discuss some important financial considerations.
If I asked each person on this call what keeps them up at night regarding their personal finances, the answers might sound something like the questions on this slide. How will I continue to meet my living expenses if my income will be reduced? What employer-provided benefits will I be able to access if I'm disabled? What government benefits will I be eligible to receive if I'm disabled? How will I be able to pay for my medical expenses if I lose my ability to work? And how do I plan for the future given the unpredictability of my MS? The objective here tonight is simple, but not necessarily easy. We hear the word wellness being used so often these days, many times when discussing holistic approaches to medicine and health. Well, we're going to think of it in terms of personal finance. I've got a lot of information on my slides, most of which I'm not going to be reviewing in detail. However, I will be discussing those aspects of finances associated with exiting the workforce and disability benefits. The goal tonight is for you to be inspired to take actions towards your financial wellness. And that means something different to each one of you because each one of you has a different set of circumstances. Please use the slides as a toolkit of sorts as you navigate your own journey. The timing of this program coincides with the publication of a brochure the MS Society recently updated. It's a workbook and reference manual all in one. It's called Financial Planning for a Life with MS. If any of you have seen the old brochure, which was commonly known as Adapting, this is a greatly expanded version and it's fantastic. I say publication, but know that the brochure is not being published in hard copy form. Much of the information changes often, so to be most current, it's available as a downloadable PDF. I believe it will serve as a tremendous resource for you, and much of the information I'm providing tonight is also in this brochure. I highly encourage each of you to check it out. When I talk to people about financial planning, I use the word context a lot. Each one aspect of personal finance affects other aspects, positively or negatively, and we need to understand how those different aspects relate. Only after you've answered the question of context can you begin to make wise financial decisions. Additionally, know that your financial life is not static. It's a journey. And when you understand where you are right now, where you want to go, then you can begin to map out an appropriate and efficient route. You also need to remain flexible and adjust your route as circumstances change. So how do you go about doing a comprehensive financial inventory? The parts of the inventory are listed on the slide. The first two components are a cash flow statement and a balance sheet. If you've never done a personal financial statement, and that is just simply a list of what you have and what you owe, what you take in, and what you pay out, then I assure you that the effort you make to put that together will be well worth it. If you're not willing to take the time to do that, then you're far less likely to set and reach attainable goals. Next, compile financial information and documents, which we'll talk about in a bit. And lastly, your benefits and resources. There's largely employer-sponsored and government benefits, which we'll dive deeper into as well. Your cash flow statement is quite simple. It's your household income and your household expenses. For your expenses, I suggest that you take time, maybe a month, maybe a few months, and closely track where and how you spend money. You have to be honest with yourselves. Once you fully understand your spending patterns, then you'll be able to make changes to them. I assure you that doing this exercise alone will change how you spend, and you will become more discerning in your spending as you become more mindful of it. Your balance sheet is very simply a statement of what you have and what you owe. On the topic of assets, I want to point out the importance of having an emergency account that is appropriately funded. Most people consider this to be the go-to place to get funds when those unexpected things in life creep up, the car or the roof needs repairing, etc. But most importantly for those living with MS is that the emergency fund is where you will need to go to meet your living expenses during the waiting or elimination period before receiving disability benefits. The more likely the need to tap into the savings to cover living expenses until these other income streams kick in, the greater the amount needed in the fund. And the longer the waiting periods are, the greater the amount needed as well. That's why we say at least 6 months of living expenses must be at the ready, but keep in mind that your own situation might be very different. The next area of your financial inventory is important documents. I've created a list of important items on this slide. Literally create paper files to house all this information. If you're married or have a care partner, please be sure to collect all information for the both of you. By the way, the bonus of doing this is that in those times when you're feeling fatigued or if someone needs to step in and help you manage your day-to-day affairs, having these files at the ready will help out enormously. If you're employed or if your spouse or partner is employed, it's critical to understand the details of all employer-provided benefits so that you're taking full advantage of them. Most employers offer a wide range of benefits, many we've listed on this slide. Knowing the options available to you through your employer or your spouse's employer and how each works and under what circumstances you can tap into them is critical. Let's spend a minute on insurance benefits, namely disability and life insurance. Most companies offer a base level of benefits for employees, typically 1 to 2 times salary for life insurance and 60% of salary for disability insurance. You may have the option to upgrade the level of coverage. It's important to find out how much you can maximize your employer-provided benefits without going through medical underwriting. Having MS will automatically make you not eligible to upgrade. While we're on the topic of spouse or partner's benefits, take time to make sure that they are adequately covered in terms of life, disability, and long-term care insurance themselves. If employer-provided benefits aren't sufficient, you may need to go to the financial marketplace to get the appropriate coverage in place. By and large, retirement plans are the place where folks have the majority of their savings. Retirement accounts, those being 401k, 403b, IRA, or Roth IRA accounts, are subject to eligibility requirements, contribution limits, and distribution rules. I've detailed eligibility and contribution rules on this slide, but I want to focus on the distribution rules. With regards to taking distributions from retirement accounts, if you received a tax deferral on the contribution, you will pay income taxes on the distribution. You may begin taking distributions at age 59 and a half. You must begin them at age 70 and a half. Employer plans may allow for loans, but be very careful and understand the terms of those loans. Distributions taken before age 59 and a half are subject to a 10% penalty on the full amount of the withdrawal. Keep in mind that 10% penalty is waived if you are disabled, but those withdrawals are still subject to income taxes. Let's take another polling question. If you're presently employed, does your current employer offer private long-term disability benefits? Yes, no, or are you unsure? Perfect. So it looks like about 60% of you have employer-sponsored long-term disability benefits. Some of you don't, and some of you are unsure. Let's talk about those. You'll need to get detailed information on your employer-provided short-term disability and long-term disability contracts. This slide lists those areas you will need to know about your plans. Meet with your human resources contact to get the details of the plans, which should also provide you with the process for applying for benefits. If necessary, contact the insurance carrier itself to review these plans in more detail. Some of you may have individual contracts that you got on your own prior to your diagnosis and not through an employer. While less common for folks to do this, these types of plans can be quite different. Regardless of the type of plan you have, you must get the facts of your plan in writing. Some plans have very broad definitions of disability. That is, the person cannot do the specific job or their own occupation. Let's use the example of an orthopedic surgeon. One contract may define disability as the inability to do his or her own occupation, namely that of an orthopedic surgeon. But if the doctor injures his or her hand and is unable to perform surgery, with that type of contract, he or she would be considered disabled. That doesn't mean that he or she can't be able to practice medicine in some other capacity. On the other end of the spectrum, Social Security defines disability as the inability to do both your current work as well as not being able to adjust to other work due to your medical condition. That's a very different definition. You must know how your plan defines disability. Similar to a deductible in health insurance, the elimination period is the time you will need to wait before your benefits begin. These waiting periods can vary from as short as a few weeks to even a couple of years. Sometimes your short-term disability plan will cover that period, other times it won't. It's important to know how long of a period it is for both short-term disability and long-term disability. This is when having an adequately funded emergency account is going to be critical. Most disability contracts provide replacement of between 50 to 70% of income. Inquire what time period in your earnings history is considered in the calculation. The previous year's income only, or some other method. Some contracts offer cost of living adjustments on benefits. Find out if your plan does, and if it's a fixed amount, or how it's calculated. And very importantly, ask when your disability benefits end. Some may pay for a fixed number of years, as little as 2 to 5 years. Others pay to a certain age, commonly to age 65. Generally, if your employer pays the premium, the benefits are taxed. If you as the employee pays the premium, then the benefits will not be taxed. Ask your employer if you can be taxed on the premium they pay in order for your benefits to be tax-free. This may not be possible in all situations, but it's worth asking. And lastly, find out how your plan benefits coordinate with Social Security disability benefits. Many of you will find that your employer plan benefits will be reduced by the amount you receive in SSDI. It's important to know that what your total disability benefits will be from both sources. We'd be remiss if we talked finances without discussing Social Security in more detail, and we could do that for hours. When it comes to Social Security benefits, it's best to go to the experts themselves. Go online, make an appointment, or call the Social Security Administration to get additional information about the benefits that are available to you. And very importantly, if you haven't done so or haven't in a while, I want you to go online and get your latest Social Security statement. If you're married, have your spouse get his or her statement as well. This slide has the web address to sign up and get your statement. Social Security will pay benefits to people who can't work because they have a medical condition that's expected to last at least 1 year or result in death. You must have sufficient work quarters, and that varies according to age, to be eligible for Social Security disability income. After 2 years of being approved for SSDI, you become eligible for Medicare. Health insurance coverage through COBRA extends up to 11 months beyond the usual 18 months of coverage if you're disabled. With regards to working while disabled, Social Security has special rules called working incentives that allow you to test your ability to work and still receive SSDI. You may also get help with education, rehabilitation, and training through the Ticket to Work program. After a trial work period of up to 9 months in a 60-month period, during which there are no limits to your earnings, there is a 36-month extended period of eligibility in which you can earn up to $1,170 per month before it affects your benefits. I've covered SSDI very quickly, and I'm by no means a Social Security expert, but at the bottom of the slide is the phone number and the website address to get additional information about benefits. Because the subject of Social Security and private disability benefits is so complex, to help the MS Society has a number of brochures that explain the topics in much greater detail. We encourage you to check those out.
How do you know when it's the right time to leave the workforce? You should stay in the workforce as long as you can, and leaving the workforce is a personal choice that takes into account your individual employment and all of the financial factors. The acronym BREATHE provides a step-by-step decision-making strategy to help you decide whether to remain in the workforce or to leave the workforce entirely by exploring all of your employment and financial considerations. Remember, slow down, just breathe. This slide reminds us of the importance to take a moment to breathe. Next slide. Sorry, the slide before reminds us to take a moment to breathe, inhale and exhale. Do not make any decisions hastily. Problem solve with a well-planned out approach. R for resilience. You are resilient. What life experiences can you draw from? Here are 3 things to remember when you are going through rough and tough times. 1, everything changes. Your story is constantly evolving. 2, you have overcome challenges in the past. 3, truly great things take time to achieve or arrive. Evaluate and assess your current situation. Has work become more challenging due to the symptoms of MS? Take the time to look at the whole picture from different perspectives. Take self-assessments to identify your overall talents, transferable skills, and personal attributes. Discuss your current medical status with your healthcare provider and consult with your family and friends.
This is also the time to do a complete evaluation of your financial situation, the where are you now question. Take time to do a thorough financial inventory as we discussed.
Before making an impulsive decision to leave the workforce and/or apply for disability, be sure you have fully analyzed possible employment alternatives.
Ask yourself the what-if questions and build scenarios about your financial situation under specific employment circumstances. The goal of building out the what-if scenarios is to know that you have the information in one place so you can become systematic about your decision-making. The worst time to make decisions is in a crisis situation. It's then that we need to be the most disciplined. What we've done so far with the assessment phase is to make sure that you have all the information needed to make decisions. Next, we need to put together a mental checklist, if you will, to help make decisions in the future as your circumstances change.
Is work working? People often see things from the perspective of, I should work. I have to stay employed. I can't give up. I can't give in to my MS. Work for most of us is the way we define who we are. You may want to ask yourself, is work enhancing my self-esteem and my self-confidence? Think outside the box and view your self-worth and identity from another perspective. Think proactively and be creative. Cultivate other aspects of who you are. Create a new identity by expanding your personal and career options.
E stands for execute. Remember, if you fail to plan, you're planning to fail. The very fact that you're on this call is a testament to your desire to not only think about your situation, but put into action the changes to your situation. By the same token, if you go through the planning process, all that hard work will be for naught unless you execute that plan. This is a lifelong process that should be reviewed periodically, considering where you are on the employment continuum, as well as how your financial situation changes. Most importantly, continue to breathe and don't make any decisions hastily, and always ask for help.
We want to introduce the following case study, Sally, to illustrate the employment continuum and the steps to consider while using the Breathe decision-making strategy. Sally is a 50-year-old single woman with a 17-year-old daughter in her sophomore year of high school. Sally has taught high school students English literature for the past 25 years. She was diagnosed with MS when she turned 40 following an episode of optic neuritis in her left eye and muscle weakness in both legs. Although her optic neuritis has improved, her muscle weakness has worsened and she is unable to stand for more than 30 minutes at a time and has difficulty walking the 3 flights of stairs to her classroom. Additionally, she has now experienced some bladder problems and has frequency of urination.
Let's briefly review some of Sally's current financial situation. Right now, her household living expenses are being met with Sally's current income alone. Both Sally and her daughter have health insurance through Sally's employer. Sally does not know details of other employee benefits that she has available to her. Sally is able to set aside funds into her retirement plan on a pre-tax basis and has a small savings account at her bank. A college savings plan was established for Kim when she was in elementary school.
Sally used the Breathe decision-making strategy to evaluate her next step. First, the disclosure dilemma. How, when, and what should she tell her employer about her MS condition? Will the use of accommodations make it possible for Sally to maintain her full-time responsibilities at work? Sally consulted with her MS support group, her healthcare provider, and contacted the MS Society Navigator for resources on disclosing her condition. She consulted with Jan for practical accommodations to perform the essential functions of her job. Sally evaluated and analyzed her current situation. She decided to disclose and discussed the feasibility of implementing the following accommodations with her employer: to change the location of her classroom to the first floor for easy bathroom access and less steps to climb, to teach from a seated position through the day, allowing her to rest her legs, to reschedule her free time during the middle of the day to give her an additional break and to refuel. If teaching becomes too challenging, Sally could consider modifying her work duties to a more of an administrative role. She can continue to use the resources we touched upon earlier in this presentation and throughout the course of her remaining career, as her situation may continue to change over time. If Sally's optic neuritis returns or her condition worsens, she can request additional accommodations from her employer. She could consider an anti-glare guard to relieve eye strain, and screen reading software to allow text to be converted to voice. She can continue to research Jan Soar's website to get additional accommodations.
Sally's first step in evaluating her current financial situation was to complete a thorough financial inventory. Through the MS Navigator, Sally was paired with a financial counselor in her area who guided her throughout the process. Sally and her daughter tracked their expenses for a few months and discovered several expenses that could be reduced or eliminated. These extra savings were redirected to build her emergency fund. Sally created a weekly roundtable with coworkers that met during lunch to review and discuss employer-provided benefits. She had a phone conversation with her school's retirement plan advisor to review her account and to understand the Roth option in her retirement plan. She found that without increasing her tax situation, she could use the Roth option for some of her contribution and receive tax-free distributions on that portion in the future. Sally and Kim met with the school counselor to discuss college financial aid options. Sally explored summer employment options at the local community college, and Kim looked into part-time and summer employment options for herself so that she could begin to contribute to household expenses.
What if accommodations are not enough to keep Sally employed full-time, but Sally still is able to work in some capacity? Even though Sally is not at this point, it is not too early for her to begin to think about some likely next steps on her employment continuum. She can explore alternative career options using the Department of Labor Career Planning Resources, Career One Stop, and ONET. She can contact her state vocational rehabilitation agency for localized employment-related services.
In fact, it's very important that Sally begin to ask these what-if questions right now, because Sally is in an optimal financial state. Her earnings are meeting her expenses. She's able to save money. She has health insurance and other employer-provided benefits. And it's from that optimal state that she can choose to make changes. If she waits too long and her situation changes, she may lose out on those options.
To continue to work in some capacity, Sally could work as a substitute teacher, where she can have control over her work schedule. On days she feels more challenged by her MS condition, she can decide to not work on that day. She could consider taking a school administration position, either full or part-time, where she can work from a seated position. She can work part-time teaching or choose to work as a part-time tutor.
The most important thing is for Sally to make assumptions about how her income would change with each of those employment options. Then she would need to look at how her expenses would change if she would be able to meet them. It was clear that Sally was not going to be able to maintain her current spending level on a part-time salary. And since housing was the largest expense, Sally and Kim began discussing other living situations that would reduce expenses even further. It's important that she begin this type of planning now so she can carefully consider options and find the appropriate solutions for when that time comes. Sally discovered that if she maintained 32 hours of employment, she would still qualify for benefits. This became Sally's goal as her next step, and she kept an eye out for administrative positions that could reduce her work schedule. If she did need to cut back to under 32 hours, she got information about current COBRA costs and options for health insurance under the ACA.
Again, Sally should continue to ask the what-if questions. What if accommodations are not enough and other employment options are no longer possible, and Sally finds that she is not able to work at all? What if in the future she finds that she exhausted all of her employment options and she must leave the workforce altogether? This is where Sally needs to think outside the box and refresh her self-identity. She needs to look at her self-worth from another angle. Work is only one aspect of a fulfilled life. Sally will need to understand her value from a whole life perspective and build a personal resume that includes all of her values, all of her virtues, her talents, and her unique qualities. To do this, she can begin to view herself as an employee who had a career and did great work. She can reflect on the success and the achievements of all the students whose lives she's touched. She can revitalize her relationships with family and friends and consider transferring some of those skills to volunteer work or possibly join social organizations. She can create a new bucket list and incorporate those interests that she's put on hold while she was working full-time and too exhausted to partake in.
Again, Sally needs to do some homework and make some assumptions about how her income and expenses will change if she is receiving long-term disability and/or Social Security disability income benefits. If Sally finds that her long-term disability benefits pay 60% of her full-time salary, that's a huge reduction in a household income. That type of reduction will require some tough decisions as far as cutbacks. Not only will Sally and Kim need to move to a much smaller residence as they discovered previously, but maybe Kim will need to stay closer to home when she is in college to help care for her mother. She may also need to maintain some part-time employment while she is in school to help contribute to household income. As far as health insurance, COBRA can cover Sally for up to 29 months until she is eligible for Medicare if she does go on to SSDI. If not, she'll need to explore benefits through her state's insurance exchange. Kim may need to do the same when she starts college. Her school may offer some sort of insurance option. This is also the time that Sally should ensure that her legal documents are current. In doing so, she would be wise to meet with an elder law attorney in her area who can help advise her on Medicaid planning issues. So, what is your next step?
Wherever you are along the employment continuum and your financial wellness, we hope that you find the tools and the resources that we presented this evening to be useful as you approach your next steps. Remember, just breathe. You are where you need to be. And thank you for joining us this evening, and I'm going to turn it over to Steve for questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Ronnie and Sylvia, for all of that wonderful information. So it is time for questions. Just as a reminder, if you do have a question, please type it in the questions and chat box found in your control panel, and we will be able to ask them to Ronnie and to Sylvia. So our first question, this will probably be addressed by Sylvia, but there's a disclosure piece here too. So Ronnie, you may have some insight too. This person says if they have not yet disclosed their MS diagnosis to their employer, will asking about short-term and long-term disability benefits make my employer suspicious that I will be soon going on a claim? So Sylvia, maybe do you want to start with that?
Yeah, and I've actually, interestingly enough, had that same question before from a client, and as I told them, and as I would suggest, is if you have not disclosed your MS diagnosis to your employer, or perhaps even if you have, let your human resources contact know that you are simply doing some financial planning, and your financial advisor has asked you to provide him or her with all the information about your employer-provided benefits, such as your short-term disability and your long-term disability. You are simply doing planning, and you need to have that information at the ready. And so I think that is the easiest method and simplest, is just to say, I'm doing something, doing some forward planning, and I need this information in order to complete that.
And I would just add also that although that's a fabulous advice for people, you know, to always defer to somebody else, but also that there are some companies that have, you know, online resources and are full-bodied and really do explain a lot about the short-term and long-term disability, and so some of those that information may actually even be suitable, but really to also look to see what the employer does have in terms of brochures.
Great, thank you both. The next question, Ronnie, this might be something that you could shed some light on. This person has been trying to get back into the workforce after they've been out for a few years. What type of advice or resources or suggestions might you give to this person?
Yeah, so it's not uncommon, you know, these days that people have gaps in their work history, and it's really not something to, of course, we can go so much into this question, but what I take away from that is, you know, and having gaps in your work history is not necessarily something that needs to be overly worried about, that anyone needs to overly worry about. What's really most important is that you think about how you're going to describe what those gaps are, and specifically if you're not disclosing about your medical condition, to think about whether, you know, you were taking time out to work to raise a family or help a family member or volunteer, and just really to be prepared to be able to describe and define what those work gaps are. So just also, as we've been saying throughout the webinar, that this is the time to utilize your resources, you know, to consult with your healthcare provider's team of specialists, perhaps as a vocational rehabilitation counselor or a social worker or a mental health clinician on staff, and to contact the MS Navigator to find agencies that specialize in employment services for individuals with MS. There's a whole lot of employment information, as I spoke about, and each state and area has access to different agencies. And also that the state VR agency has employment services. And as I had said earlier, if you've not been in the workforce for a while and thinking about a career change, Access VR can really be helpful in that, because they can help you to look at your transferable skills and really decide, looking at the whole picture, looking at your current MS status and what you're able to do and what skill sets you have. And so just as a reminder, and this is again on the employment resource handout that we're providing, the financial and employment handout, that the resources is the Occupational Outlook Handbook, where you can learn about all different types of occupations and salaries and employment outlook. And then, of course, the Career One Stop and the ONET, which can help you to really take a look at different types of occupations, the skills that are required, and the wages and employment trends.
Great, thank you, Ronnie. Silly, I think this question would be more aligned to you. You suggested that we consult with a financial counselor or I'm an elder law attorney. Which or are there other professionals that could help guide or advise through retirement to maximize a person's resources?
I believe that the financial advisor is going to be the first stop on this. Would be my first choice, and search for not someone who is just simply, say, an investment advisor. What you're wanting to get is a preferably certified financial planner, somebody who is well versed in all aspects of financial planning. And I would first begin with them, because they would be the people to begin developing a strategy, as opposed to simply implementing some sort of investment planning or something like that. The very first place I would start is with your MS Navigator, because there is a team of financial education partners, professionals that are available throughout the nation. that are working with the MS Society providing just that benefit to MS clients. So that is where I would start. They can also then advise you if engaging an elder law attorney is appropriate. And the elder law attorney is going to be very helpful in Medicaid planning, special needs planning, as well as making sure that any legal documents like wills and trusts are all in place. But I would first begin with a financial planner who is going to do a holistic overview of your current situation and develop some strategies to get you where you want to go.
Great. Thank you, Sylvia, and I appreciate that kind of the plug for our financial education partners program. So definitely
reach out to the MS Navigator. Absolutely.
Definitely feel free, and again, you'll see towards the end of tonight's program, we put the slides up with the National MS Society's phone number, so please do contact us. Ronnie, how do I handle telling friends that I've essentially retired due to my MS? It's an ego problem, and I was a professional for 25 years, which is how they know me. Do you have any type of advice or suggestions for this person who is kind of grappling with what next now that I have stopped working?
Yeah, so I think this is where we go into that think outside of the box and to really take a look at all of who we are. The notion of stopping work, meaning that everything that I did in my career no longer exists. And that's not so. I mean, everything that we've done in our lives is a part of who we are, whether we're still doing that activity or taking on some new activity. And I would really think about, looking at all that you are other than work, and really thinking about how you're going to channel all of those skills that you used for work into who you are now and what is your next step, and really to, again, embrace the quality of who you are. There's more, I think it's really how people tend to define themselves based on what they do and how much money they earn, and that's really unfortunate, because that really leaves out such a major part of who we are. So the other thing I would say, too, is that seeing that this is something that is difficult, that this is where I would, consult with other people and rehearse it. And, and again, we're going to continue to shout out to the MS Navigator, but the MS Navigator has a wealth of information, and the MS Navigator could really help, help you come up with the words and how you want to say it. And I really believe that, role-playing and rehearsing really decreases our anxiety about saying things. And then sometimes through that role-play, we could really think outside the box and come up with something that we haven't thought about before.
Great. Thanks, Ronnie. Sylvia, this is a pretty specific question, but I think it's something that you had mentioned earlier. What is the definition or criteria for disability as it relates to early withdrawals from a 401k without the 10% penalty? Is that something that you might be able to be familiar with, or is that too specific of a question?
This is, well, it's a specific question, but I'll tell you what you need to do. What you need to find out is you need to get your plan document or your summary plan description, and those are specific terms regarding your employer-provided retirement plan. In that is where it will detail how they define disability and what they will need to have. Sometimes it is just simply a doctor's statement, and sometimes it may take it's a little bit more intensive, that they might have some sort of, they might have to do a little bit of underwriting, if you will. So it varies from plan to plan, but that's how you would need, what documents you would need to get is either the plan document, which is going to be longer, or the summary plan description, which may or may not be that detailed. So try and get those from your employer. Like Ronnie suggested, which was great, they may have a website that those documents are available that you can access online, or you may have to ask your human resources contact to provide you with those. But that's where you're going to get that definition.
Great, thank you. Ronnie, how do you know when it's time to make a career change? And then you've already mentioned some of these resources, but again, I think it never hurts to reference them again. What are the resources that might be available to help those who want to continue working, but who may have limitations?
Yeah, so, and really, just to remind you of the BREATHE acronym, because whenever we're making a major change in our life, it really requires all of those steps to really consider that we've exhausted all our options, so then it becomes a very well thought out plan without being something impulsive. There may be, something going, so really to take a look at, requesting accommodations. Although making a career change can be wonderful and can be energizing, I also think that that's something to really think about and plan. And as we've been, I think that the takeaway from the webinar is that, it's important not to make these decisions alone. That everybody has, every situation and every decision is very personal. And to get assistance to unpack whatever your individual situation is. And to utilize the resources, to utilize resources at wherever you get your MS care. And like I said before, perhaps as a social worker or a rehabilitation counselor, or they know, your agencies that are local to where you live. So it takes a lot of planning and requires a good amount of self-discovery. So with career changes and also what resources are available, to go back to the PowerPoint, and this is where the Department of Labor Resources, ONET, and Career One Stop, but also the State Vocational Rehabilitation Agency, and a lot of people don't know about the State Vocational Rehabilitation Agency, because through that agency you can also identify what other types of careers that you may want to take a look at, or whether you're able to do it, or perhaps even want to volunteer a bit before you do make that career change. So actually, one other thing is there's also an excellent, another, I don't think I mentioned this before, there's also a archived webinar, MS Can Do webinar that was in February of last year, navigating a career change. So that would be also something useful to look at.
Great, thank you for that. Celia, this question I think would be for you, wondering if it's possible to get a long-term disability policy after you've been diagnosed with MS if your work doesn't offer one. Would you be able to answer that, or would that be more a question for like a long-term care attorney?
I would absolutely say that would be next to impossible to get a long-term. Is this long-term disability, or did you say long-term care?
Long-term disability. Long-term disability policy.
The MS diagnosis would simply knock you out. I don't think that there would be that you would not.
So
there
kind
would, of without medical underwriting is the only way that you would wind up being able to get that kind of coverage, and that's generally just in a group plan.
Right. So again, just kind of to clarify, so like the likelihood of probably being able to get a private policy, not an employer-sponsored policy, would be very difficult, if not impossible. So,
very near
okay.
impossible, if not completely impossible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Let's see here. Ronnie, a question. You had mentioned the ADA earlier. Just somebody was wondering what might be fair or legal to expect when it comes to requesting an accommodation at work.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think what we did talk about is really, number one, what's most important is that it is your legal right. It's your legal right to disclose your disability and to ask for a reasonable accommodation. Of course, those go hand in hand. And just to remind people that the MS Society's website has a tremendous amount of resources on the ADA. And how to request it, how to write letters, the strategies for disclosing. So, just when you're requesting an accommodation, again, this is where researching and planning. Researching, like I just said, looking up all of the information in the National MS Society. Also, Jan has information on the ADA and on accommodations. And discussing with your healthcare provider as to, when, asking your provider what you might be asking. So that's the requesting part, but also how to ask is that you research, you plan, you discuss, write out the request, and use the MS Navigator to help you with this. Like I said, you can do the research and kind of answer the questions for yourself, but don't do it alone. There's no reason to do it alone. Rehearse it, discuss it, know what you're asking for, and also important to take a look at who you want to make the request to.
Great. We maybe have time for one more question here. Typically, how disabled do I need to be in order to apply for permanent disability? Symptoms are difficult to manage, but do I need to be immobile in order to get permanent disability? So I would think, Sylvie, that's a question that's more geared towards you to answer.
Well, it depends on where you're trying to get the benefits from. If this is from, say, an employer-sponsored or even a private long-term disability plan, then the definition of disability is going, and the process for applying for benefits is going to be dependent on that plan itself and the contract, how they define disability and what they will need. Whether it's just maybe an attending physician statement that says he or she is disabled and therefore that might suffice. If it's Social Security disability, remember, it's the inability to do your work and any type of work, basically. It's the inability to work. And I put on the slides, I've actually taken the definition of disability from Social Security's website. So it's on the slide, the specific language. So it's a very different definition. So it depends on the type of benefits that you're trying to receive. If it's through your employer-sponsored long-term disability or if it's Social Security. You have to know where you're trying to get the benefits from to know which definition it is that you're looking at.
Great. Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. Unfortunately, I think that we are out of time for questions, but thank you so much for fielding as many questions as we were able to get through. Laura?
Thank you, Ronnie, Sylvia, and Steve. I do want to inform you of some additional resources that you may find on the the Can Do MS website, which is mscando.org. You'll find our archived webinars, e-news, and library articles. And you can also submit a question to the Ask the Can Do team, which will be answered by our team of MS experts. Steve?
Thanks, Laura. You did see this slide very kind of quickly earlier in the slide deck, but I just wanted to just show it again, just to remind everyone about some of the National MS Society resources dealing with employment. We do have a variety of employment brochures, including the Win-Win Approach to Accommodations, Employment Matters is comprised of several video segments about key employment issues, as well as a toolkit that focuses on job searching, resume writing, cover letters, interview skills. The website that is listed here, nationalmssociety.org/employment, is full of employment-related information, including disclosure, accommodations, resources, career change. So definitely feel free to check that out. And if we did not get to your question this evening, feel free to send your question via email to the employment questions at nmss.org address that you see up on your screen now, or again, our toll-free number in order to reach an MS navigator is 1-800-344-4867.
Thanks, Steve. And the next presentation in our webinar and telelearning series will be on Tuesday, April 4th. It is Enhance Your Job Search with Online Resources. One thing I would ask is if you have enjoyed our webinars and if you enjoy our webinar series, would you please text to donate if you'd like to support us. Our text to donate number is 970-626-6232. And I would like to add, end this evening with a very special note that it's MS Awareness Month. And Can-Do MS is very excited to work with Biogen and other MS advocacy groups on hashtag MySupportHero, which is a very unique and special way to celebrate your support partners. If you want to support your support heroes, which include your friends, your family, your healthcare professionals, or others, you can post on social media using the #MySupportHero hashtag, or you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and share posts that contain a virtual flower. And finally, you can visit abovems.com to download the flower and replace your social media profile picture with this image. Again, join us for MS Awareness Month by using the hashtag MySupportHero. And I want to thank you all for participating in tonight's webinar and wish you a great evening. Thank you so much.